So I am many things. I am a minister, white, an educator, ethnically Jewish, an activist, genderqueer, a nerd, a complex person, many facets. Just like each and every one of you, with entire galaxies of blessed complexity swirling within me each and every day, as the Reverend Ninan Soto wrote in our Words for Meditation. One of my many complex identities is that I am genderqueer, sometimes called non-binary. One that is currently living on the edge of the margins of Unitarian Universalism and the wider world. Debates rage across the internet and through our legislatures, fierce as wildfires and hurricanes that race across the landscape. People ask questions like, should people like me, trans and non-binary folks, be allowed to use restrooms, play sports, have pronouns? Hotly argued from all sides, as if my very presence tears at the fabric of reality. In the midst of being involved in a conversation about theology or spiritual practice, just mentioning that I use they and them pronouns when someone refers to me can drag an entire conversation that I was excited to have into a sudden death spiral of grammar questions. Sometimes it makes me wonder if my gender is a black hole that swallows up all the other things I was excited about in social space, one by one, like nothing can escape the event horizon of the pronoun conversation. But on other days, I recall how it felt before I had the words to talk about it at all. How uncomfortable it was to be left in the unknown, trying to swim like the narwhal that I wasn't. Like trying to fit into a bathing suit I'd outgrown. A constant awareness of being constricted. I couldn't move normally. I was always eager to get somewhere where I could take off the suit and finally get a full breath. Thankfully, I grew up Unitarian Universalist. My congregation went through the Welcoming Congregations program back when I was still in high school. But at the time, transgender people were seen as strictly binary, moving either from male to female or female to male, made to perform the gender they were transitioning to with precision in order to earn hormonal and surgical approvals from doctors and psychologists who saw reassigning gender as a performance contest. So I believed I wasn't trans because I couldn't imagine spending all that effort to peel myself out of that ill-fitting swimsuit only to get right back into a different one that would fit me just as badly. I decided perhaps my gender was just very, very angry about the patriarchy. And that worked for a few years, sort of. But like choosing whether to be a sea unicorn or a land narwhal, something was still off. And then I read a book by Kate Bornstein, a book that actually we have published some of her works through Beacon Press. I realized there were names for people like me. Gender Outlaws was the book, and it was genderqueer, non-binary, people who were messing with queering the concept of gender by not being one of just two endpoints, but a spectrum moving along and creating our own points everywhere, like stars in the sky. The thing about language is that once you can name something, you become able to hold it, to imagine it, to make it real in the world, to be, to repeat it and keep it and share it and grow into it. Whether your name is narwhal or unicorn, caterpillar, cherubim, trans, non-binary, they, she, or he, having a name, a word, a pronoun, means that you can talk about your existence and tell stories and make meaning of your life in relationship to others and their lives. People who can talk about themselves can find other people, can form communities. And just like that, you become someone who is not alone, but part of the whole of interconnected creation, as it was in the beginning, and ever shall be. Many of you might already know of the creation story from Genesis, whether you're of Christian or Jewish heritage, or just live in this society. God creates the world, and then God gives to Adam the power of naming. But that's not the whole story. For Ha'adam, the Adam, the human, as created, Adam goes on to name the waters of the earth, precious metals, the animals, and finds no match, no partner or help. In the Hebrew of the original text, though, unlike what you may have seen in cartoons or popular media, we find that God draws apart the side of the human's flesh, dividing one into two, which reflect one another. It is in this moment, after the drawing apart of one into two, that Ha'adam, the Adam, names himself Ish, the male, and names the other side, Isa, the woman, taken from him and drawn apart. This is not a subordinate, but a happening in relationship, a reflection from one determining belonging and difference. with another. Thinking of this story in its original language with its revised and more partnership, relational language that we now may understand. Many of you may have had analogous experiences. Perhaps becoming a Unitarian Universalist, walking through the doors and thinking, or coming online and noticing, oh, I didn't know there was a church for people like me. And then perhaps saying, I shall name myself Unitarian Universalism, for I am in relationship with people who reflect my values, amplify and diversify our understandings of who to be in the world. This, too, is the power of a name for identity, to connect and grow and thrive. It's so much bigger than pronouns, gender, even religion. Many of you may have had these moments, identifying or reframing self, the experience of suddenly knowing, oh, that's who I am. And now I fit a little better in the world. Whether it's becoming a writer, joining a women's group, becoming part of a community organization or political action, you suddenly find people who care about just the same things you do, and different. And you are named and known and part of something that is larger and where you are accountable to one another. Being named, having language for naming, is an essential piece of framing and holding our core being and our values. As in Madeleine L'Engle's book, A Wind in the Door, which draws upon words of biblical psalms and the prophets of the Bible. The essential conflict is between those who are named, those who are creation and creating and being, and those who would make one another anonymous, meaningless, to be X'd or extinguished from existence. This is part of the tragedy and the danger of much of what is happening politically right now to transgender children and their families. The inability to name, to know, to be part of community is a soul wound. To be named, butterfly and behemoth, galaxy and grasshopper, star and sparrow, is to know that we matter, that we are. Rabbi Mike Moskowitz, an Orthodox rabbi from Congregation Beit Shinchat Torah, who speaks to the inclusion of intersex and transgender people in all aspects of Orthodox Jewish life, says, religion is about being able to be in a relationship with God. But if we don't create space for people to be who they are, as the most genuine, authentic versions of themselves, then none of this is real. For Unitarian Universalists as well, we have already stretched and pulled out that point that places humanity and God in a larger context, creating space for relationships with divinity and that which is highest, and our values beyond restrictive frames of who God is, what that looks like, what you must believe. We are now looking to allow the human end of that relationship to flourish and grow in complexity by affirming the worth and dignity of all people in their most genuine and authentic concept of self. For this, too, is holy work. And before we end, here I'd like to pause for a moment and ask simply that you take a gentle breath or two and check in with yourself and your body. Because for so many of us, the ways that we are taught to associate gender and the sense of self include shame. And so somewhere down in the deep reaches of your body, there might be a shrinking embarrassment, perhaps from being young and mixing up the words girl or boy, or not getting the difference between pronouns, she to talk about mom and he to talk about dad, or playing dress up, being confidently told that you're not allowed to pretend to be a person who wears those clothes, therefore a gender that is not yours and you cannot. Or for oh so many other reasons. There may be shame, or fear, or defensiveness. And we must breathe through it and keep breathing, keep being and growing and thriving, breathing into your most genuine and authentic concept of self. Because until you know how to stay with your embodied self, it won't matter if I tell you how Shakespeare and Jane Austen also used the singular they 300 and 400 and 500 years ago. It won't matter if I tell you that suicide rates for trans teens drop by over 40% if they have even one supportive adult in their lives. It won't matter that in both the Jewish and Christian traditions of creation, that God created that first human, male and female, and called them by a gender-neutral term until they were drawn apart from both sides to become endpoints, not only, but some of 8 genders recognized in ancient Jewish texts, and even more that we can see today. But none of these facts or stories, none of this evidence matters until you know how to breathe into your embodied self and truly feel that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding and worthy of defense. Then, when you know of yourself and of your promise, then you can sing for the glory of the living and the loving and the flaming of creation. Sing with us, dance with us, and be with us. Then we may all know ourselves as part of creation, created and ready to thrive May it be so, always and ever.
Well, listen to me, baby. What I say is true.